This week in Billionaires, former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy has seen his net worth surge by about 80% to an estimated $1.8 billion in just 9 months. Ramaswamy, who launched a bid for Ohio governor in February, has benefited from the continued strength of Roivant Sciences, the pharmaceutical company he founded in 2014 to develop shelf drugs. The company has notched major successes in recent years, including a $7.1 billion spin-off sale in October 2023 and positive drug trial results in September. For his gubernatorial bid, he is now prioritizing external fundraising, a shift from the heavy personal loans that financed his presidential campaign. Google co-founder Larry Page recently overtook Jeff Bezos in the billionaire rankings after his fortune surged dramatically, fueled by Google parent Alphabet's strong market performance. The firm's stock spike followed robust third-quarter earnings and the debut of the Gemini 3 AI model, adding approximately $7.6 billion to Page's net worth in a single day. This placed him third on Forbes' real-time billionaires list, with co-founder Sergey Brin also seeing significant gains. American billionaire Walter Wang is suing his half-siblings and cousins in the U.S., alleging mismanagement of billions of dollars in family trust assets intended for charity, family unity, and U.S. business support. This feud follows the 2008 death of his father, Taiwanese petrochemical tycoon Y.C. Wang, without a will, sparking prolonged legal battles over his $6.8 billion estate. The lawsuit claims charitable giving has dramatically slowed since 2008, contrasting with high legal fees. Walter, a plastic pipe manufacturing mogul, states his goal is enforcing his father's charitable intent, not personal gain. Welcome to Beyond the Billions. I'm Giacomo Tognini, and joining me today is executive editor Louisa Kroll. Louisa, I've worked with you for my entire career at Forbes, and I think you probably know the most about billionaires than probably anyone else in the world. So, what has been your most interesting or memorable experience with a billionaire?
Okay, first of all, there are many experiences, and I always joke with the team that in my next life I'm going to write a book about billionaires and have a chapter about, each quirky kind of strange thing they do. So one example was when we went and met the LaCroix billionaire. He insisted,
I've heard the story.
Yes, yeah. So he insisted that I go, even though there was another more junior editor there and the reporter. We were trying to convince him to let us do a story on it. And so we show up, and he literally shakes our pinkies, okay? And we're all a little bit taken off guard, like, what the heck? And then we go in and we spend probably like an hour with him, and he's like showing us all these different ways that he checks the scents for the flavors. It was really crazy. But then he starts talking about personal things he's read about me. He clearly had Googled me. He knew everything about what my husband did. And then at the end of the meeting, he hugged me, but gave pinky handshakes to the other people. And we were all so weirded out that it's become quite famous, amongst those of us at Forbes, and we call it the pinky handshake chapter.
Yeah, thankfully we haven't started doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess to start off, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about billionaires, right? First of all, there's so many of them. There's many that are really high profile, but what do you think people don't really understand or know about them?
Well, I mean, I know we're going to be talking about philanthropy today, but let me just veer for a second. I think the one thing that may or may not be surprising, but just how much they care what other people think of them. Like it really matters to them, whether it's the actual number, whether it's, how you perceive them, whether you're being treated well. I mean, there's so many anecdotes. It's very rare to have a billionaire not care at all. And they really, go to such great lengths. And I'm always amazed that they do, because to me, I'm like, if I had $1 billion, I don't think I'd care what anybody thought, but that's definitely not the case.
When they complain about one word in a sentence
oh
in
my
the
gosh,
bio
of course.
on the online profiles.
Yeah. The other thing that was surprising to me, I mean, now it's not so surprising, but how much they care about their photos, which actually I kind of get that too.
Sense.
It's like, you see that all the time, and the number of people that have new photo sent to us and asks us to replace it. And I have to say, for that, we're usually like, okay, great, you want that photo instead? Go ahead. But yeah, we fight with them all the time about a sentence or a word. Yeah, but I keep thinking, we should charge billionaires like a separate fee, and we'd make a lot of money because a lot of them make sure they read their, their profiles. So. But turning it back to philanthropy, I don't think, I actually was thinking about this. I'm not sure there really are misconceptions, only because I think that what people think is that, maybe billionaires aren't quite as philanthropic as they need to be. And I think that is probably true. I mean, I think that the great thing is that there are exceptions to every rule. And there are certain people that are so enormously generous, that have really changed conversations over the decades, that have really kind of influenced, not only giving, but, how we give and what we give and just the conversations. But they're a rare group. And, most of these people really are often giving for tax reasons, or they're giving to their alma mater because they want a building named after them. And so it's not the kind of giving where you really think they're spending their money in super positive ways. But I think that, yeah.
And, when we talk about the publicity, right, when you and I and others on our team see a big donation, right, this person, whether we know they're a billionaire or not, has given, let's say, $100 million donation. What are some of the questions you ask, right? Because you were just talking about, right, people do it for the publicity, right, or being named, but when you see that, what are the next steps you take to report that out?
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to say, just like a billion isn't what it used to be, 100 million of giving isn't what it used to be.
Inflation hits.
Inflation
too, right?
hits. Now it's a little bit more common. You're like, oh, another 100 million donation. Like, it really has to be like 500 or billion for me to get really excited. But no, in all seriousness, you ask, have they actually given it?
Right.
Or is it a pledge? Like, often it'll kind of read as though they've given it, but actually they've promised to give it over a period of time.
Right.
So are they going to give it within a year? Are they going to give it over 5 years? And are they giving shares? Are they giving it directly to the organization? Are they putting it into their foundation? All of these questions help us understand why they're doing it, and also what's happening with that money. Like, is it actually going to the people that it needs to help, or is it some sort of tax maneuver to help save them some money in the end? Because again, even though they've got so much money, billionaires really like to make sure that they're saving money as well.
Yeah, there's great tax benefits for having those private foundations, right?
Yes.
So building on that, right, we have this. We track Billionaire philanthropy throughout the year. We have these philanthropy scores, sort of looking at how much they've given and how much they've given as a percentage of their net worth. And we also have a list that we put out at the beginning of each year, the top givers list. When you look at the scale of billionaire philanthropy now, and you compare it to kind of the heyday of the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, when you had Carnegie and all these other big names, how do you think about the scale we're seeing now and that you've covered for many years versus what the legacy from back then?
Right. I think it's an interesting thing to think about. I feel like every generation has its Rockefeller or it's Carnegie.
Right.
Nowadays, I would say it's Buffett, it's Soros, it's Mackenzie Scott, and we'll talk about all these people, Gates. But I think what is different now is, first of all, the sheer size of the numbers, but also people are getting rich at such an incredible speed that they can never seem to give away enough. Like, I think J.D. Rockefeller had given away 90% of his fortune. Nobody is close to that. And we'll talk more about who the biggest percentage giver is. But I do think that sheer numbers, it's just so much bigger, but in a way it's harder to give a ton away. I think that I read somewhere that actually on the Rockefeller site, they've given a total of $26 billion, which is less than, Gates or Buffett has given at this point.
You're not even in the top 10 richest in the world at 26 billion, right? Probably even more than that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the biggest givers as a percentage of their net worth, and the smallest, who is that right now?
Well, as a percentage of their net worth, it is George Soros, who's, a controversial figure in Trump's mind, but really has been a very generous donor for many, many decades. And he's given away 76% of his fortune. I think the next person is Lynn Schusterman. She's a oil heir and very, very generous as well, and she's in the 40 percentile. The world's biggest donor is Warren Buffett.
In dollar terms.
In dollar terms. And he's given away $65 billion, which is crazy, especially since he actually got into philanthropy much later. It was only around 2006. So I think he was 76 at the time when he started to donate. And initially he was really donating through Bill and Melinda Gates' foundation. But what is interesting is that at one point, I think it was like 10 years ago, he was worth $60 billion. The problem is, so he would have given away his whole fortune. The problem is that Berkshire Hathaway stock keeps going up so much that he's, even giving away that much money, he's still worth more than $140 billion. So there is definitely something to be said for it being hard for some of these people to, give quickly enough.
The wealth compounds too quickly for them.
Exactly. Which is another reason why not be more generous, but a lot of people have not gotten that message.
Well, speaking of a well-known billionaire whose wealth has compounded very quickly and has not been that generous, I believe Elon, right, Elon Musk, richest person in the world, has not been among the most generous, right?
No, he's in our booby prize category of people that have given less than 1% of their wealth. Elon has given away less than $1 billion the last time we looked at the filings. I think, because there's a year lag
with
between
the 990 filings.
The 990s are how they are how people, file their charitable giving and how you can track it. And we looked at his 2023 and it was like 600 million plus. He has made noise about giving over $9 billion away, but he's pretty much moved it into a DAF, which means that he hasn't given it to any charity. He's just set it aside. Which of course
Donor-advised funds, right?
Yes, donor-advised funds, which again has a tax benefit. So why someone with as much money as he has really has to worry about that, I don't know, but that money has not been, given out or, doled out. Forbes, which of course is also very different than, Rockefeller's days, but we only track the money that actually goes out the door.
Right.
Like if you just put it into a foundation, we're not even counting that.
Well, because foundations only need to, I think, contribute 5% of their assets, right, to still maintain
I think that's right. But anyway, they do not need to give a significant portion away, and they can just put it there and
and the
sit it out.
Even more obscure, right? They don't have to report.
Even more obscure. You can't even track those.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, and it just makes it even more opaque. And I think that's another reason why the general public maybe doesn't trust the motives of some of these quote unquote philanthropists.
And when you look at the different strategies, right, of these people, they can vary a lot, right? From Warren Buffett first donating through Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to then donating separately. Who do you think is the most effective philanthropist right now in the U.S.?
So Mackenzie Scott, one of the first things she did, obviously, was to drop the Bezos last name. And she very quietly started incredibly systematically giving hundreds of millions of dollars away to hundreds of nonprofits. And the fantastic thing is that it was no strings attached philanthropy. Often these nonprofits didn't even know that they were getting the money. They didn't have to send in these very complicated nominations. They don't have to count for every single dollar that they spend. You know, my husband was in nonprofit for years, and the amount of paperwork you have to send back to your donors, I mean, it takes up so much of your time.
And just to file for the grants in the first place, the applications are super
So
time-consuming.
it's so competitive, it's so difficult, and she really got the people that were working with her to find just really great nonprofit leaders and gave it to them. But she is the third biggest giver by percentage, even though she only started in 2019, and she's among the top biggest givers in the world.
Mm-hmm. And that's just a completely different method of giving, right?
Yes.
Rather than having these foundations that
Yep.
are, I remember reading the stories we put out over the last few years about her. People would just get a phone call,
Yep.
right? These foundations sometimes. And she's also been a major donor to HBCUs, right? Historically Black
Yes.
colleges and universities. How important has that been as a sort of, as a group of foundations and, well, in this case, sort of universities that she's been
Yeah,
help?
I mean, I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure she does not give to foundations. She gives directly to the
Right.
nonprofits
I meant sort of the
and to
nonprofits,
the
yeah.
HBCUs
Yes.
and stuff. And I will say that, like, there are so many examples of where she just gave to a nonprofit and raised that nonprofit's profile immediately. And I think that the leadership she's taking in HBCUs is very similar. I think that she's given roughly $300 million just this year to HBCUs. She gave Howard University its biggest single gift ever. It was $80 million in the past few weeks, I think. And I think that it, first of all, kind of shows different ways that you can just automatically give. It kind of, I hope, inspires other people, whether it was coincidental or not. I'm not quite sure of the timing, but Arthur Plank, who's the co-founder of Home Depot, he also gave a $50 million gift to Atlanta HBCUs right around this same time. Again, I think that one knock is that so many of these billionaires have given to the top Ivy League or elite schools, whether
Often
it's
their alma maters.
exactly,
Right.
often their alma maters, whether it's Mike Bloomberg giving hundreds of millions to Johns Hopkins or Ken Griffin giving to Harvard. And when she does these things, the world sits up and listens, and I think it really does have a dramatic impact. We just did a story recently that looked at all of the donors to HBCUs. I mean, of course, I think the amount we added up was about $1 billion, which is better than it had been. Some of that giving is really key over the past couple of years. But for instance, Phil Knight gave over $2 billion to I think it was University of Oregon, right? Anyway, one of the ones out west, and that was more than all gifts that have ever gone to HBCUs. So there's still a huge opportunity to catch up in certain areas, but I think that she has quietly had quite an impact.
Well, you were talking about Mackenzie Scott setting an example for other philanthropists. Recently, one of our fantastic colleagues, Phoebe Liu, wrote a story about Carrie Tuna, another noted philanthropist,
Right.
who's married to Dustin Moskowitz,
Yeah.
famous for
Yeah.
making his billions from Facebook, and then Asana. What did you think was sort of most interesting about her philanthropy and how she's sort of setting an example for others as well?
Well, first of all, I was just so proud of Phoebe for actually getting Carrie to sit down and talk with her, because she's one of those people that has, not quite like Mackenzie, who doesn't even have any photographs out there, but very much keeps low
Very
profile.
private.
Doesn't talk to a lot of press, and she was a Wall Street Journal reporter before she was introduced to Dustin by Jessica Lesson, who is the founder of The Information. And so as journalists, we were always really kind of curious about her role and what she's been doing, because she had quit a long time ago to run their philanthropy. So it's really fascinating. Basically, she talked a lot about, effective altruism, where you're looking to make the biggest impact on the biggest, most catastrophic problems. And, she uses the example where she went out that first year and talked to over 100 people about, where should she go to, what should she do. and almost everybody said, find your passion. Find out what you're passionate about and give to that. And she ignored all of them, which I love. You know, she stood by her own instincts and basically decided that what was more important was to find out where she could do the most good, what were the challenges that really needed their attention. And of course, you know, one of the things that she talked about was artificial intelligence. You know, long before this, you know, huge circular, you know, investment spiral where everybody's, everybody's putting so much money in. I mean, the money's just insane, you know, but almost a decade ago, they started giving to nonprofits. I mean, interestingly, they had given money to Anthropic when it was a nonprofit.
That actually OpenAI nonprofit as well, right?
Yep. Yeah. But in Anthropic, they basically, you know, gave them money, and it turned into a $500 million investment that they then moved into their foundation. But their point was that it is such an explosive area where everybody's going to be looking to make money that you need nonprofits, you need donors to be willing to invest to make sure that it's being handled in the appropriate way. And I have to say that I actually felt like kind of encouraged to be hearing someone like that with that amount of money at their, you know, that they'd be able to spend, you know, thinking about, you know, huge problems like that. Obviously, they also do a lot in, you know, healthcare, et cetera.
I think another interesting part of that article was how looking at the greatest impact you can have on the greatest number of people, right? And how I think there's a quote about you could have a mediocre malaria nonprofit in certain parts of Africa would have a greater impact than a really successful nonprofit targeting a rare disease in the U.S., right?
Completely. And she's just so mathematically driven and so outcome driven that, again, it's just a really great way to be thinking about philanthropy. The other thing that I've been starting to hear a lot about is, kind of sunset clauses and, this desire to spend down your money. We were talking about Rockefeller in the beginning, and one of the things he did was he set up these, big foundations that his kids would take over and keep running, and the Rockefeller Foundation still exists, and it's still involved in a lot. But you're starting to hear people say, we want to spend it down in a certain period of time. And, Gates, just to almost everybody's surprise, just announced that he is looking to close down his foundation by 2045. And this idea that you have to spend more quickly, you have to think about ways that you can put this money to work, I think is also a really interesting thing that you're going to hear more about, as people look to kind of help have a quicker and bigger impact.
And I think the only person that comes to mind that actually did spend down all of their money was Chuck Feeney, who was on the Forbes Billionaires list, but then over time fell off, right? Because he had a very effective foundation,
did. Right? Yeah, he set out to give it all away by the time he died. And he did that. And he made sure to be very aggressive. And I think, I'm sure that he, like Mackenzie, had a huge impact on some of these people. We gave him the Lifetime, Philanthropy Award. It was a number of years ago now. And again, that was an event that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett were very involved in, initially. I mean, we haven't really talked about, the Giving Pledge, which was something that they set up to really inspire others to start giving a lot. Now, I don't personally think that we've seen necessarily that coming, to fruition. They were supposed to promise to give away, at least half of their fortune while they were alive or dead. And, some people have done that, but I would argue most of the people that have done it would have done it anyway.
And some have died without doing it.
And some have died without doing it. Yeah. So, but any idea that tries to motivate and inspire, I think, is a good idea. And sometimes it works out better than others.
There's also been, I think, a rise in cause-driven giving, right? So going back to what you mentioned earlier with Carrie Tuna and passions, right? The reason all those experts told her that is because it's something that happens a lot, right? Billionaires who are really passionate about democracy initiatives or, particular disease or healthcare. How do you think that actually works in practice? And is that, do you think, is that an effective strategy for these
I
people?
mean, I'm kind of torn because it actually can be a very effective strategy. And, who can blame them? I mean, to me, the best example that I always think of is Sergey Brin. He found out that he carried the gene for Parkinson's. His ex-wife, was the founder of 23andMe. They were very into, tracking your genes, seeing what you have. And when he found that out, he started to get very involved in both research and, donations. I believe he's the biggest individual donor to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And he has, I don't want to say singularly because none of it is singularly, but he has helped change the course. He's funded a lot of really important research in this area. And, you see people start to do things like that. Is he in a race against time? Does he have a personal motivation? Of course he does. And I think that's only natural. I did a story many, many years ago on the blacks. Leon and his wife started giving a lot to melanoma after she almost died from melanoma because it was misdiagnosed. I mean, again, I think that, wanting to help, whether it's, your child has bipolar and you want to start donating. I mean, I think that's only natural. And I think that when you do have somebody with the fortune that Sergey Brin does, it really does bring very positive, outcomes, to a particular area. You just kind of wish that, that was like a multiplying effect, and all these, diseases or initiatives or problems would have similar backers.
I mean, to that point, right, we're talking about, when you look at the Bill Gates, I guess formerly Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation,
Yeah.
being so enormous and donating to so many different causes. What do you think about the impact that has on the idea that, in a democratic country, the government should be, in theory, funding research into these things or trying to solve those problems? How do you think about sort of that dichotomy where, great that we have private, wealthy people willing to put the money in, but the sort of lack of partnership or the lack of the government doing its part?
I mean, I personally feel like certainly in this day and age, you cannot rely on the government. I mean, we've seen kind of the things that have happened, in this current administration that has cut aid to so many African countries, for instance, and that is a place where Gates has really always stepped up and stepped in. And so, it's interesting. I don't think of Gates as really kind of spread too much. I mean, he's really taken on a few, causes, whether it's malaria or tuberculosis. And he's spent, an extraordinary amount of time and money focused on those. And personally, I think that, these days government has so many things that they're kind of dealing with. Sure, partnerships would be great. I know that Gates personally has gone and tried to talk with Trump about, some of these, initiatives. But if you've got really smart people that can be having this impact and kind of cut through government, bureaucracy and do it themselves, I'd say, power to them. We need more, not less. One thing I did want to mention that I'd forgotten is I'm just really excited by the role that women are taking. When you look at our billionaires list, I don't have to tell you, they're not that many women. Yeah. And there are very few self-made women. When you look at our, like at the top givers, I think nearly half of them are women.
It's disproportionate compared to
it really is. And whether it's Mackenzie, and what made me think of it is that Melinda Gates, once she kind of split off and, took some of the money because she wanted to do her own. I mean, she's really dedicated a lot to, women's health care and women's issues. And she's one of the biggest funders of, women's reproductive issues. And I think that I really think they're starting to make a tremendous impact. Carrie Tuna, Mackenzie Scott, Melinda Gates,
mentioned Lynn Schusterman,
Lynn
right?
Schusterman. I mean, they're a lot, and I'm really kind of heartened by that, and they're definitely leading by example.
You touched earlier on sort of the fact that wealth is growing so much faster.
Yep.
That billionaires, even if they want to give away more, it's become harder.
Yep.
Do you think this has grown more because of that the wealth has accumulated so much? I mean, you've edited and worked on the Forbes Billionaires list for more than 2 decades at this point. You've seen this enormous growth in wealth. Do you think that's largely due to that, or because billionaires aren't being generous enough?
Well, I definitely don't think it's because they haven't been generous enough, but I think that, look, a lot of these biggest fortunes, particularly the ones, as well as me, but it's interesting. There are more billionaires than ever, for sure. But the amount of money held by the people at the top is just astonishing.
Right.
And those are the people that the amount of money that they have and the gains that they make each year is it's mind-blowing. I think that it's largely driven by this crazy equity markets and the fact that so many investors are gambling on it and putting money in. We'll see how it all ends. Not everybody has all of that in cash, and I'm completely aware of that. I do feel like, though, in this world where they seem to be fighting to keep their tax benefits, and they're fighting to be able to get their keep their money in DAFs, et cetera. I just feel like they need to do more to step up, to be public givers, to be spending as much as they can. I mean, what are you going to... I feel like I live a perfectly nice life on a Forbes salary. Like, what do they need all that money for? I mean, how many yachts, how many homes can you have? So I just feel like, again, going back to Mackenzie Scott, you look at how some people can just be so generous. And I do feel like just in this culture where billionaires are getting bad names because they just have such a crazy amount of wealth, and so many of them are like fighting to hold on to it, that they really should be stepping up in, much more dramatic ways.
Is it refreshing to see an example like Mackenzie Scott or similar ones? When you
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, look, covering people that have achieved, such success in this world can be inspirational in and of itself. But obviously, not everybody does, great things with their money. I think that, every example where you have somebody that's really passionate and really trying, obviously Mackenzie Scott, whoever gets that sit down with her, I am already jealous, and it hasn't even happened. I mean, she's just an incredible woman, and she's done none of it for publicity. She's really done it to be helping so many individuals, and she has. And I think that within the list of 3,500, there are dozens of more of good stories, of people. There's one right now that I haven't written yet, so everybody stay tuned. But, there's a woman who got divorced, and I think that, percentage-wise, I think it's going to put her in the group of some of the top givers. But, she's done it very quietly and without fanfare, and, those are some of the best stories. So.
And hopefully that inspires others to do the same.
Exactly. Hopefully there is a domino effect of some sort.
Well, Louisa, I talk to you most days of the week, but this has been really interesting, and obviously a story we'll keep following. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Giacomo. Thanks for having me today.
You can find the articles we talked about today in the show notes.